The stars above the Tyrrhenian homeworld had never looked so cold. Counselor Veth stood at the wide observation window of the Alliance command tower and watched the night sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of his eyes, 3 full Tyrrhenian battle fleets were dying. He could see nothing from the surface, but the reports kept coming in, one after another, each one worse than the last. He read them in silence. His long blue fingers trembled as he held the data tablet. The 3rd fleet had just gone silent. 1,200 warships, gone in less than 2 hours. The Vorkai Empire had come without warning 3 weeks ago. They had arrived through the outer edge of the Tyrrhenian star system like a slow black tide. Thousands of ships, heavy cruisers, siege platforms, carrier vessels that stretched for kilometers. The Tyrrhenian Alliance had fought back immediately. They had believed they could stop the invasion. They had good ships, trained crews, years of military preparation. They had believed all of that would be enough. It was not enough. The Vorkai did not fight like other species. They did not hold back. They did not negotiate. They did not send warnings or make demands. They simply arrived and they destroyed everything in front of them. Their weapons burned through Tyrrhenian shielding like it was nothing. Their formations moved in ways that no Tyrrhenian military mind had predicted. Their ships took damage and kept coming. The Vorkai were brutal, patient, and completely without mercy. Veth turned away from the window and walked back to the central command table. The room was full of officers and aides, all of them speaking in low, tight voices. Maps of the star system glowed on every screen. Red markers showed Vorkai fleet positions. There were so many red markers, they were getting closer. General Thar, the head of Tyrrhenian defense, walked up to Veth. The general's gray skin looked pale. His 4 eyes were dark with exhaustion. "Counselor," Thar said quietly, "the 3rd fleet is gone. We have confirmation. Admiral Yevon's command ship was destroyed 40 minutes ago." Veth closed his eyes for a moment. Admiral Yevon had been a friend, a good officer. He had served the Alliance for 30 years. "How long do we have?" Veth asked. "Before they reach the inner planets." Thar paused. 7 days. Maybe 8 if they slow down to consolidate. But they have not slowed down yet. What forces do we have left? Patrol ships, defense platforms around the homeworld, some reserve cruisers. Nothing that can stop what is coming. Thar's voice was flat, not giving up. "Just being honest. Counselor, we need help. We cannot win this alone." Veth already knew that. He had known it for days. The question was where the help would come from. The Tyrrhenian Alliance had allies, neighboring species, trading partners. He had sent requests to all of them. Some had responded with sympathy. Some had not responded at all. None of them had ships to spare. None of them were willing to enter a war against the Vorkai Empire. The Vorkai were feared across 40 star systems. No one wanted to stand in their path. That left one option. An option that every member of Veth's council had argued against. An option that Veth himself had hesitated over for 2 full days before accepting there was no other choice. The Deathworlder broadcast. The galaxy used the word Deathworlder to describe species from extreme environments, planets with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, dangerous radiation, constant predator pressure. Species that evolved on such worlds were different. Physically harder, more aggressive, more tolerant of pain and damage. Most Deathworlder species were considered unstable by galactic standards. Some were violent, some were territorial. They were not the kind of neighbors most civilized species wanted. But right now, Veth needed warriors. Not diplomats, not trading partners. Warriors. There was a small cluster of known Deathworlder species within reasonable signal range. The Kreth, the Valdun, the Burning Hands of Serath. And on the far edge of that cluster, almost too distant to be worth including, a young species from a single wet planet orbiting a yellow star. A species that had only reached space in the last few hundred years. A species that most of the galaxy considered minor and unimportant. Humans, Earth species. Carbon-based bipeds from a world called Earth. A world with high gravity compared to most inhabited planets, a chaotic biosphere, extreme weather, and an evolutionary history of constant predator competition. They had reached space recently. They had a small presence in the outer systems. They traded occasionally with a few alien species. Most galactic records on them were thin. The Tyrrhenian intelligence files on humans were barely 3 pages long. Veth had read those 3 pages 4 times. The humans were aggressive, that much was clear. Their history was full of war. They had nearly destroyed themselves several times with their own weapons. They were passionate, unpredictable, and according to one Tyrrhenian diplomat who had met them in person, deeply unsettling to be around. Something about the way they moved. Something about the look in their eyes. The diplomat had written that humans seemed to always be watching everything at once, like prey animals that had become predators and never forgotten what it felt like to be hunted. Veth did not know if humans had warships capable of helping. He did not know if they would respond. He did not even know if they would understand the signal in time. But he had no other options left. He gave the order. The broadcast went out on all known Deathworlder frequencies. It was simple. A location signal. A marker for Tyrrhenian space. A single message in 7 languages including the basic galactic trade language that humans were known to use. The message said only, Tyrrhenian Alliance under attack. Seeking warrior species. All aid welcome. Coordinates attached. An SOS sent to the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. And then Veth went back to the window and watched the cold stars, and waited to see if anyone would answer. The signal reached Earth 14 hours later. It came in through the deep space relay station at the edge of the solar system. A routine monitoring AI flagged it within seconds, and pushed it up through 3 levels of automated filters before it landed on the desk of Dr. Stusa Cho, senior analyst at Earth's Deep Space Communications Office in Seoul. Sina read it twice, then she read it a third time. She pulled up the origin coordinates, cross-referenced the sender frequency against the known alien contact database, and confirmed the identification. Tyrrhenian Alliance, a mid-tier civilization about 60 light-years away. Peaceful traders, no history of conflict with Earth, no previous distress contact. She reached for her comm unit and made a call to Bo that went up 4 levels of command in under 10 minutes. Within the hour, the message had reached the office of Earth's Secretary of Defense. Within 2 hours, it had reached the emergency session of the Global Security Council. The council chamber was deep underground. It had been built 40 years ago when humanity first confirmed that they were not alone in the galaxy, and that some of what was out there was not friendly. The room was large and round with screens covering every wall. 23 people sat around the central table. Military commanders, intelligence directors, political leaders. The most powerful people on Earth, gathered in one place because a signal had come in from 60 light-years away, asking for help. Secretary General An Ji-won chaired the meeting. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for making fast decisions under pressure. She had been in office for 6 years. She had been briefed on the full scope of Earth's military assets from her first day in office. She understood exactly what she was looking at. The Tyrrhenian Alliance is being destroyed, the intelligence director said. Their battle fleets are gone. The attacking force is the Vorkai Empire. Our records on them are limited but consistent. They are an expansionist species. They have absorbed 12 other civilizations in the last 200 years. They do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate after hostilities begin. How far is Tyrrhenian space? General Park Dae-won asked. He was the commander of Earth's strategic fleet. A large man with gray hair and very calm hands. 61 light-years, Senna said from her seat at the far end of the table. She had been brought in to brief the council directly. At standard jump drive speed, roughly 3 weeks of travel. And with our drive rows on, Jinji-won asked, looking at Park Dae-won. The general met her eyes, a small pause. 11 days, he said. If we push the fleet hard. Several people around the table shifted in their seats. A few exchanged glances. The number surprised them. 11 days to cover 61 light-years. That was far beyond anything in the publicly known space travel records. Because the drives Park Dae-won was talking about were not publicly known. Almost nothing about what Earth had been building for the last 30 years was publicly known. Secretary General An Ji-won looked around the table, at the military commanders, at the intelligence directors, at the political leaders who were still catching up to what was being implied. The Tyrrhenians sent this to Deathworlders, she said quietly. They sent it to warriors. They sent it to us because they are desperate and they have nothing left. She paused. The question before this council is whether we answer. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then General Park Dae-won placed both hands flat on the table. We answer, he said. No one disagreed. The base had no name on any public map. It sat at the L4 Lagrange point between Jupiter and the Sun, hidden from casual observation by a rotating electromagnetic scatter field, and the sheer distance between it and anything humans regularly flew near. From the outside, if you happened to be close enough to see it, it looked like a loose cluster of asteroids. Dark rock. Nothing interesting. Inside it was something else entirely. Admiral Kim Soo-yeon had commanded this base for 7 years. She had watched it grow from a half-finished construction yard into the most powerful military installation that humanity had ever built. She knew every corridor, every dock, every ship in the fleet by name, by configuration, by crew roster. She had overseen the final fitting of the last dreadnought herself, standing on the command bridge while engineers ran final diagnostic checks, and the crew stood in formation along the deck. She was at her desk reading a systems report when a secure transmission came through from Earth. She read it once, put it down, picked it up and read it again. Then she stood up, walked to the window of her office, and looked out at the fleet. They were docked in long rows, spread across 3 massive internal bays that had been cut into the asteroid rock over decades of slow, careful excavation. The smaller ships were near the front, destroyers and fast attack cruisers, sleek and dark, designed for speed and precision. Behind them came the heavy cruisers, broader and heavier, loaded with long-range weapons batteries and thick armor plating. And at the back of each bay, in their own separate docking arms, the dreadnoughts. There were 9 of them. Each one was over 2 kilometers long. They were not elegant ships. No one had built them to look beautiful. They were built to be unkillable and to kill things. Their hulls were layered with reactive armor that could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Their drive cores ran on a compressed fusion technology that no other species in the known galaxy had developed yet. Their weapon systems combined magnetic rail artillery, directed energy arrays, and a new class of kinetic torpedo that could track and adjust through electronic countermeasures. They carried full complements of strike craft. They had internal medical facilities, machine shops, fabrication units, and food production systems that could support their crews for over a year without resupply. They had names: Iron Resolve, Stone Sky, Burning Reach, Deep Strike, Pale Fire, Long Silence, Since Red Shore, First Grief, Unmoved. Admiral Kim Soo-yeon had named them herself. She turned away from the window and activated the fleet-wide command channel. This is Admiral Kim, she said. All ship captains, senior staff, and department heads are to report to the main briefing hall in 1 hour. This is not a drill. We have received operational orders from the Global Security Council. Begin pre-departure checks on all vessels. I want full readiness reports on my screen in 40 minutes. She closed the channel and began pulling on her uniform jacket. For 7 years she had commanded a fleet that had never fired a single shot in actual combat. A fleet that had trained constantly, run simulations endlessly, pushed every system to its limits in practice runs that the rest of humanity never knew about. A fleet built for a war that had not come yet. It was coming now, just not the war anyone had planned for. The briefing hall held 400 people. Every seat was taken and officers stood along the walls. The room was very quiet as Admiral Kim walked to the front and pulled up the star chart on the main display. 3 days ago, she said, the Tyrrhenian Alliance broadcast an SOS on all Deathworlder frequencies. Their military has been destroyed. They are being invaded by the Vorkai Empire. They asked for help from any warrior species in range. She paused. The Global Security Council has authorized a response. We are the response. The room stayed quiet, but the quality of the quiet changed. It became heavier, more focused. Our mission, Kim continued, is to transit to Tyrrhenian space, engage the Vorkai fleet, and remove them from the star system by whatever means necessary. We are not going as advisors. We are not going as observers. We are going as a combat fleet, and we will fight. She pulled up the known data on the Vorkai Empire, ship counts, estimated weapon types, battle records pulled from galactic intelligence sources. The Council's intelligence teams had spent the last 36 hours pulling together everything they could find. The Vorkai have defeated every species they have gone to war with, Kim said. They are experienced fighters. Their ships are well armed. Based on their combat record, their tactics rely on mass numbers, heavy forward pressure, and the psychological effect of a fleet that does not stop advancing no matter what losses it takes. She let that information sit for a moment. We have studied their tactics, she said. We understand them, and we have something the Vorkai have never encountered before. She did not finish that sentence. She did not need to. Everyone in the room already knew what she meant. We depart in 18 hours, Kim said. Use the time well. Dismissed. Commander Park Ji-ho was the captain of Iron Resolve, the lead dreadnought of the fleet. He was 39 years old, originally from Busan, and had spent 18 of those years in the Space Navy. He was not the oldest captain in the fleet. He was not the most decorated. He had been given command of Iron Resolve because Admiral Kim had evaluated every captain in the fleet and decided that he was the best at the specific thing that mattered most in combat. Staying calm when everything was going wrong, and making clear decisions in the middle of chaos. He walked the full length of his ship after the briefing. He did this sometimes when he needed to think. Iron Resolve was 2 kilometers long and walking it end to end took almost an hour. He passed through the crew decks, the weapons bays, the engineering sections, the strike craft hangars, where the small attack ships sat in their launch racks like seeds waiting to be scattered. He stopped at the forward armor section and put his hand flat against the inner wall. On the other side of that wall, 3 meters of layered composite and reactive plating separated him from open space. He thought about what was waiting at the end of this journey. A species fighting for its survival. A fleet that had already destroyed 1,200 enemy warships and still lost. An enemy that had never been turned back once it committed to a target. He thought about his crew. 840 people on this ship alone. Across the full fleet, more than 30,000 men and women who had trained for years for exactly this kind of moment. He walked back to the command bridge and sat in the captain's chair and began reviewing his battle station assignments. 18 hours later, the fleet moved. The docking clamps released one by one and the ships of Earth's secret fleet emerged from the asteroid base in long, slow formations. First the destroyers, slipping out in tight groups. Then the cruisers, heavier and more deliberate. Then the dreadnoughts, massive and dark against the stars, their drive cores building to transit power. The glow of their engines lit the space around the base like 9 slow-rising suns. Admiral Kim watched from the bridge of her command ship, long silence as the fleet formed up around her. She counted them off the screen, all present, all ready. She thought about the Tyrrhenian counselor who had sent out that signal, reaching out to Deathworlders, reaching out to the most dangerous species they could think of, because they had run out of other options. Probably not even expecting a response, probably hoping against hope that something scary would show up. She almost smiled. Something scary was on its way. Fleet is in formation, her navigation officer reported. All drive showing green. Ready for jump on your order, Admiral. Kim looked at the star chart. 61 light years, 11 days at maximum drive output. Somewhere at the far end of that distance, a war was going on. A species was dying, and an empire that had never been stopped was about to run into something it had never imagined existed. Jump, she said. Space folded. The fleet vanished. The stars were quiet again, and no one outside the fleet and the council knew that Earth had just sent 30,000 soldiers and 9 dreadnoughts to answer a call for help from a species most humans had never heard of. On the 9th day, Ambassador Gilveris decided to stop hoping. He had been monitoring the Deathworlder frequencies from the communication hub on the Tyrrhenian defense station orbiting the second planet. It was one of the last functioning military assets the Alliance had left. The Vorkai had not reached the inner system yet. They were still consolidating their hold on the outer planets, moving with the heavy, confident pace of a force that knew it had already won. The SOS had gone out 12 days ago. No response had come. Zelveris had not expected much from the other Deathworlder species. The Kreth had acknowledged the signal and sent back a polite message explaining they had their own territorial conflicts. The Valdoon had not responded at all. The Burning Hands of Sereth had sent a brief message asking for payment terms, which Counselor Veth had tried to negotiate, but the numbers were impossible. The Tyrrhenian treasury could not afford what they were asking. The humans had sent nothing. Zelvaris understood. It was a long-range signal to an obscure young species that barely had a footprint in the galaxy. They probably had not even picked it up. Or they had picked it up and had no idea what to do with it. Or they simply did not have ships capable of making the journey in time. He was reviewing the latest defense assessments, trying to figure out if there was any configuration of what remained of the Tyrrhenian fleet that could slow the Vorkai advance even slightly. When the proximity alert went off, he looked up at the screen. His first thought was that the Vorkai had sent a forward scouting element ahead of their main fleet. The sensor returns showed a large group of objects emerging from jump space at the outer edge of the system. But the configuration was wrong. The Vorkai came in broad formations, spread wide. These objects were coming in close together, tight, disciplined, and there were a lot of them. The identification system was struggling. It was pinging the incoming vessels against every known alien ship profile in its database and finding nothing that matched. "What is that?" Zelvaris said out loud. His sensor technician, a young Tyrrhenian named Voss, was bent over his station with all four eyes wide. His fingers were moving fast across the controls. "Unknown configuration," Voss said. 53 distinct vessels. Drive signatures do not match any known species profile. He paused. "They are very large, larger than our heavy cruisers. Some of them are much larger than our heavy cruisers." Zelvaris leaned forward. "Are they broadcasting anything?" "Checking." Voss worked for a moment. "Yes. Low-band broadcast on galactic trade frequency." He looked up. "It is in trade language. It says, 'This is the Earth fleet. We received your signal. We are here. Please respond on this channel.'" Zelvaris sat very still for a moment. Then he grabbed the communication handset. "Earth fleet," he said carefully, his trade language coming out slow and precise. "This is Ambassador Zelvaris of the Tyrrhenian Alliance. We read you. We did not expect a response. Who are you? What are you?" The answer came back after a short delay. The voice was calm, clear. The trade language was accented but understandable. "Ambassador, this is Admiral Kim Su-yeon commanding the Earth Strategic Fleet. We are human. You sent an SOS to Deathworlders. We are answering it. Can you give us a full tactical briefing on the enemy fleet's current position?" Zelvaris found that he had no words for a moment. He had read the thin intelligence file on humans. He had seen the description of a young species, limited space presence, no known military fleet of significance. He had included them in the broadcast almost as an afterthought. He had never genuinely expected a response. And even if he had expected a response, he had not expected this. 53 warships. Unknown configuration. Drive technology that had crossed 61 light years in 11 days. He looked at Voss. Voss looked back at him. Neither of them spoke. "Ambassador?" The human admiral's voice came again. "Patient. Steady, we do not have a lot of time. Where is the enemy fleet?" Zelvaris cleared his throat and began transmitting everything he had. On the bridge of Iron Resolve, Commander Park Ji-ho studied the tactical display as the data came in from the Tyrrhenian ambassador. The picture was not good. The Vorkai had taken the outer system completely. Their main fleet was gathered around the fourth planet, a gas giant, where they appeared to be using the orbital fuel extraction infrastructure to replenish their ships. They had forward patrol units spread across the middle system. Their total force count, based on the Tyrrhenian records, was somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000 warships. Park's fleet numbered 53. He had been in enough tactical training sessions to know what the raw numbers looked like. Against almost any other fleet in the galaxy, 53 ships against 2,000 would have been a massacre. But Admiral Kim had not come to this system to fight a war of numbers. She had come to fight a war of technology and shock. He pulled up the Dreadnought specifications on his screen and went through them one more time. Not because he needed to. He had memorized every number. He did it because it helped him think. The main rail artillery on a Dreadnought could fire a kinetic projectile at a velocity that would punch through any known alien ship armor in a single hit. The directed energy arrays could saturate a target zone fast enough to overwhelm standard shield regeneration. The reactive armor on the hull had been tested against every weapon profile in Earth's intelligence database, and had performed above expectations on every test. The drive cores gave them speed and maneuverability that ships this size should not have had. And then there were the torpedoes. The Mark 7 Hunters, 60 per Dreadnought. Each one a semi-intelligent weapon that could track, adjust, identify countermeasures, and change course mid-flight. The Vorkai had electronic jamming systems, according to the intelligence files. Those systems would do nothing against the Mark 7. Park closed the specifications and looked up at his bridge crew. They were focused, calm, exactly as trained. Every station manned, every system reporting green. The crew of Iron Resolve was 200 of the best people Earth's Navy had produced in the last decade. They were ready. He could see it in the way they held themselves. He opened the channel to Ambassador Zelvaris. "Ambassador," Park said, "we want to help your defense forces coordinate during the engagement. Can your remaining ships respond to orders? Can they hold position when asked?" Zelvaris answered with a slight hesitation. "Our remaining vessels are patrol class and defense platforms. They are not combat capable in the conventional sense against Vorkai warships, but they can hold position and they can follow orders." "Good," Park said. "We want them behind us, far behind us. They should not engage the enemy directly. Their role is to provide sensor coverage and to pick up any debris or escape pods after the fight." Another hesitation. "After the fight," Zelvaris repeated slowly. "Yes," Park said simply. "Commander," Zelvaris said carefully, "I appreciate your confidence, but I need to be clear about what you are facing. The Vorkai fleet numbers almost 2,000 warships. They have already destroyed 1,200 of our best vessels. I do not want to give my people false hope. Park nodded at the screen even though the ambassador could not see him. Ambassador, I understand. I am not giving you false hope. I am telling you what is going to happen. He paused for a moment. The Vorkai have not met us before. They do not know what our ships are. They do not know what our weapons can do. We have studied their tactics and their technology, and we are prepared for both. This will not be a fair fight. No, Zelvaris agreed. Against 2,000 ships, it certainly will not be. I meant it will not be a fair fight for them, Park said. The channel was quiet for a long moment. Then Admiral Kim's voice came over the fleet-wide command channel, smooth and unhurried. All ships, this is the Admiral. We are moving to engagement range. Standard Delta formation. Dreadnoughts to the front. Cruiser wings take flanking positions. Destroyers hold back for intercept duty. Strike craft remain in the bays until called. We move in 30 minutes. She paused. This is what we built this fleet for. Remember your training. Trust your ships. Trust the person at the station next to you. She paused one final time. Earth is watching. On 53 bridges across the fleet, 30,000 human beings checked their stations one last time and made themselves ready. The fleet began to move forward. Ahead of them, the red markers on the tactical display showed 2,000 Vorkai warships, unaware that something was coming for them that their empire had never imagined existed. High Warlord Grax of the Vorkai Empire did not worry about surprises. He had fought in 9 conquest campaigns over 30 years. He had seen every tactic that the weak species of this galaxy used when they were desperate. They formed defensive lines. They tried to protect their population centers. They sent envoys asking for peace. They broadcast signals to whatever allies they had. Grax had faced all of it. He had crushed all of it. The Tyranians had been no different. Their fleets had been brave. Their commanders had been intelligent. None of it had mattered. He was standing on the command deck of his flagship, the Undying Wrath, reviewing the fuel replenishment status when his sensor commander came to him. Warlord, the sensor commander said, we are picking up a fleet emerging from the outer system edge. Grax turned slowly. The Tyranians have no fleet left. Not Tyranian ships, Warlord. Unknown configuration, 53 vessels. They are moving inward. Grax walked to the sensor display. He looked at the incoming vessels for a long time. The profiles were unfamiliar. The drive signatures were unlike anything in the Vorkai intelligence database. But 53 ships, against nearly 2,000, he almost laughed. Mercenaries, he asked. Possibly. They are broadcasting on Tyranian frequencies. We cannot identify the species. It does not matter, Grax said. Whoever they are, they made a very foolish decision today. Put 200 ships on an intercept course. Use the 2nd Attack Division. Destroy them and then get back to the refueling schedule. Yes, Warlord. Grax walked back to his refueling reports. He did not think about it again. Admiral Kim watched the Vorkai intercept force form up on the tactical display. 200 ships moving toward them in a standard Vorkai assault spread. Wide formation. Fast advance. Exactly as the intelligence files had described. She had been waiting for this. All dreadnoughts, she said over the command channel. Weapons free on my mark. Rail artillery priority targets are their heaviest forward ships. I want the first salvo in the air before they are in their own weapons range. Confirmed. Came back from 8 captains. Park Jiho was already at his weapons station, personally overseeing the targeting solution. Iron Resolve's rail artillery had a range advantage over Vorkai energy weapons. Significantly, at this distance, the Vorkai ships could not hit them yet. But Iron Resolve could already hit the Vorkai. Park had spent a lot of time thinking about the psychological dimension of the first exchange. When the Vorkai fired, they expected the enemy to take hits, begin losing shields, start pulling back. That was how alien species behaved. That was how all their opponents behaved. They were not expecting to take hits before they were in range. They were not expecting what a dreadnought round would do to one of their cruisers. Firing solutions locked, his weapons officer reported. All rail batteries charged and ready. Park looked at the targeting display. 9 dreadnoughts, 12 primary rail batteries per ship, each battery holding 4 rounds ready to fire. That was 432 kinetic rounds that could leave the air in the first volley, each one traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light. He waited, watching the range counter countdown. Mark, Admiral Kim said. The firing order went out across all 9 dreadnoughts simultaneously. Iron Resolve shuddered, not violently, more like a deep vibration that ran from the bow to the stern, felt more than heard. The rail batteries discharged in controlled sequence, one after another, in overlapping chains, keeping the power draw balanced across the ship's systems. Through the forward sensors, Park watched the rounds leave on thermal tracking. Dozens of white-hot lines crossing the distance toward the Vorkai formation. The Vorkai ships were still accelerating toward them. Still 2 minutes from their own weapons range. None of them had changed course. None of them had deployed defensive countermeasures. Why would they? Nothing had ever shot at them from this distance before. The first rounds hit. A Vorkai heavy cruiser in the front rank took 3 impacts. Its hull plating was rated for sustained energy weapon fire, but it was not designed for the kind of kinetic impact a dreadnought rail battery delivered. The first round went through the forward hull like it was paper. The second punched through the drive section. The third detonated internally as the round's fragmentation core activated inside the ship. The Vorkai heavy cruiser broke apart. In 4 seconds, 7 more Vorkai ships ceased to exist. In the next 30 seconds, as the second and third volleys landed, 14 more. The front rank of the Vorkai intercept force was simply gone. The middle ranks were beginning to break formation. pulling wide, the commanders, clearly confused about what was happening and where the fire was coming from. Then the Vorkai ships finally reached firing range and opened up. The energy weapon fire that hit Iron Resolve's hull was heavy, multiple sustained beams from a dozen ships at once. On any other vessel Park had ever seen in galactic records, that kind of concentrated fire would have stripped shields, then armor, then structural integrity within seconds. On Iron Resolve, the reactive armor system activated. The outer hull layer absorbed and redirected the first waves of energy. The secondary dispersal plating spread the thermal load. The internal shielding held the rest. Park felt the ship shake. Warning lights came on in several systems. A minor power fluctuation in one weapons bay. Some armor degradation in the forward starboard section. But Iron Resolve did not slow down. It did not pull back. It kept moving forward into the fire and kept shooting. Damage report, Park said. Outer armor layer at 74% forward. Secondary systems stable. All weapons fully operational. Crew casualties, 0. Park let out a slow breath. 0 casualties. He had believed in the armor specifications. But believing something on paper and watching it work in reality were two different feelings. Continue firing, he said. Target the mid-formation ships. Don't let them reorganize. Across the fleet, the same pattern was repeating. Vorkai fire was hitting the human ships hard, and the human ships were not going down. And the Vorkai ships were going down at a rate that made no logical sense to anyone on those bridges. The alien commanders were broadcasting distress calls. They were calling back to Grax for orders. They were slowing down, uncertain, their aggressive forward tactics suddenly useless against an enemy that took their hardest fire and kept coming. Then Park launched the Mark 7 torpedoes, 60 from Iron Resolve alone, multiplied across all 9 dreadnoughts, 540 torpedoes in the air at once, each one a semi-intelligent hunter, programmed with the energy signature of a Vorkai drive core. The Vorkai had jamming systems, standard military-grade electronic countermeasures used by almost every spacefaring species in the known galaxy. The jamming systems activated immediately. Against normal torpedoes, they would have worked. Most torpedoes used simple guidance systems that relied on fixed targeting locks which could be disrupted. The Mark 7s did not use fixed targeting locks. They used a continuously updating threat assist system that could distinguish between a jamming signal and a real drive signature, even when they were layered on top of each other. Vorkai ECM was very good. The Mark 7 had been built specifically to defeat Vorkai-class ECM because Earth's intelligence teams had done their research carefully. The torpedoes adapted, curved, found their targets. In the next 2 minutes, 63 Vorkai warships were destroyed. The intercept force that had numbered 200 ships was down to 81. The 81 that remained were pulling back, breaking off. Something that Grax's forces almost never did. The Vorkai had a reputation across the galaxy for advancing no matter what, for accepting losses without breaking. They were breaking. Back on his flagship, High Warlord Grax was receiving reports that made no sense. His sensor commander was reading out numbers in a voice that had gone tight and strange. The intercept force was retreating. 119 ships gone in under 10 minutes. The enemy fleet of 53 ships had taken fire from 200 Vorkai warships and was still intact, still advancing. What species are they? Grax demanded. Still unknown, Warlord. We have no record of their ship type anywhere in our database. Find out, Grax said. His voice was quiet now. The almost law from earlier was completely gone. His sensor commander worked for a moment, pulling transmissions, running identification algorithms. Warlord, he said finally. The intercept force managed to capture part of a communication signal between enemy ships before their encryption engaged. We have identified the language. He paused. It is human. They are from Earth. Grax stared at him. Humans, he said flatly. Yes, Warlord, the young species from the Sol system, the Deathworlders. Grax looked back at the tactical display, at the 53 unknown ships that were still advancing, at the gap in his battle line where 119 of his warships used to be. He was a man who had not felt real uncertainty in 20 years. He felt it now. Recall the main fleet, he said. Full combat formation. All of them. If 53 human ships had just destroyed 119 of his warships in 10 minutes, then the full Vorkai fleet of 2,000 ships needed to deal with this right now before the situation got worse. It was exactly what Admiral Kim had been waiting for. She watched the main Vorkai fleet begin to move, and she felt something settle into place in her chest. The confidence of a plan working exactly as designed. All ships, she said over the fleet channel. Phase 2. Draw them out. The human fleet began pulling back slowly, moving toward a specific set of coordinates deep in the outer system that they had already laid as a tactical kill zone. A place where the local gravity gradients and debris fields would break the Vorkai's wide formation advantage and funnel them into ranges where every human weapon system worked best. The Vorkai followed. They were angry. They were confused. And they were chasing 53 ships with nearly 2,000. They did not yet understand that they were not hunting. They were being hunted. The kill zone had been named the Drift. It was a region of the outer Terrenian system where an ancient planetary collision millions of years ago had scattered enormous chunks of rock and heavy metal across a wide belt. The debris was dense in places, thin in others, threaded through with gravitational currents from a pair of minor brown dwarf remnants that made navigation unpredictable for vessels using standard autopilot. Human ships had been programmed with the full sensor map of the Drift before they left Earth. The dreadnoughts could move through it cleanly, quickly, using the debris as cover. For a Vorkai fleet using wide attack formations, the Drift was a nightmare, Admiral Kim watched the tactical display as the Vorkai main fleet entered the zone's outer edge. Just as her modeling teams had predicted, the wide formation immediately began to compress. Ships pulled inward to avoid debris impacts. The flanking wings fell behind as pilots had to navigate around dense rock clusters. The coherent front line that made Vorkai tactics so devastating started to break apart into smaller, uncoordinated groups. Now, Kim said, the human fleet stopped retreating. It turned. All 53 ships reversed course simultaneously and came back through the debris gaps at full drive power. The dreadnoughts led, their massive hulls threading between rock formations that should have been impossible for vessels of their size, moving with a precision that spoke to months of navigation training in simulated drift environments. The cruiser wings came in at angles from the sides, appearing between large debris clusters at distances the Vorkai commanders had not expected. The destroyers were already ahead, having slipped through narrow passages during the retreat, now behind parts of the Vorkai fleet and cutting off retreat paths. It was not a battle line. It was an ambush. A full fleet ambush, run by 53 ships against 2,000, in terrain that turned the Vorkai's numbers from an advantage into a problem. The lead Vorkai cruiser groups ran directly into the returning dreadnoughts at close range. Close range was worse for the Vorkai. At distance, their energy weapons could focus and sustain fire. At close range, the human ships could use their rail batteries on single targets with devastating effect, and the Vorkai could not concentrate enough beams to overwhelm the reactive armor before their ships were already being destroyed. Iron Resolve hit the first Vorkai cruiser group like a hammer. Park Ji-ho stood at the weapons station and worked alongside his crew, with a focus that left no room for anything except the next target. The ship shook with impacts. Warning tones sounded and were answered and silenced. The rail batteries fired in sequence, tracked and reloaded, a mechanical rhythm that his crew had practiced 10,000 times in simulation, and was now performing in reality without error. A Vorkai heavy cruiser swung in from the port side, its full battery turned toward Iron Resolve, pouring energy into the hull in a concentrated stream. Armor readings dropped in the port forward section. Dropped again. The ship's damage control systems were compensating, shifting shield distribution, but it was taking real damage now. Strike craft, Park said. Bay 1 and Bay 2. Target the cruiser on our port side. The launch bays opened. 48 small attack craft came out fast, already on course, already targeting. They were not the most powerful weapons in the fleet. They were fast and precise. They went after specific systems on the Vorkai cruiser. Not the hull, the sensor arrays, the communications antennas, the point defense turrets. In 30 seconds, they had stripped the cruiser of its ability to track, communicate, or stop the torpedo that Park then sent directly into its drive section. The cruiser broke apart in a long, slow explosion that lit the debris field orange for a few seconds before the cold of space swallowed it. Park moved on to the next target. Across the drift, the battle was going the same way on every front. The Vorkai were fighting hard. They were not a cowardly species. Individual commanders were making smart decisions, grouping ships, trying to recreate their formation advantages even in the difficult terrain. Some of their concentrated fire was punching through human shields and drawing real damage. 2 Earth destroyers had been hit badly enough to pull back from the engagement. 1 cruiser had lost a weapons bay. The fight was not clean, but the math was unrelenting. Every exchange that happened in the drift cost the Vorkai more than it cost the humans. The human ships were faster in the tight spaces. Their weapons had more range and more penetrating power. Their armor absorbed more punishment, and they had been trained for exactly this kind of fight, in exactly this kind of terrain, with exactly these enemy tactics in mind. High Warlord Grax watched his fleet die. Not all of it, not fast, but steadily. The reports from his squadron commanders were a stream of the same information in different words. We are taking losses. The enemy ships cannot be stopped. We need support. We are pulling back. He threw support at the gaps. He reorganized. He tried 3 separate tactical adjustments in the first hour of the battle in the drift. Each one intelligent. Each one the right choice against a normal opponent. Against this opponent, none of it worked. He had lost 280 ships now. The number was climbing. His commanders who had entered the drift were being cut apart in detail. The ones who had not entered the drift were being picked off by those fast destroyer-class vessels that kept reappearing from unexpected angles. And through all of it, the 9 massive human ships at the center of the fleet had not stopped. They had taken damage. He could see that on the sensor readouts, but they were still there, still fighting, still pushing his ships back. He had never seen ships that large move the way they were moving. 2 hours into the battle in the drift, Grax made a decision he had never made in 30 years of combat command. He called for a general withdrawal. The order went out across the Vorkai fleet. Pull back, disengage, regroup at the outer system edge. Some of his commanders made it. Others were caught by the destroyers before they could reach clear space. Others were hit by a final wave of Mark 7 torpedoes that Admiral Kim had been holding in reserve for exactly this moment, calculating that a retreating fleet that believed it was escaping would not be watching for the weapons coming in from the sides. When the battle was finally over, when the last Vorkai warship had either jumped away or been destroyed, the tactical display in Admiral Kim's command center showed 412 enemy ships destroyed. Another 218 badly damaged vessels had jumped away, unlikely to be combat-ready for months. The Vorkai fleet that had arrived in Terranian space with nearly 2,000 ships was down to roughly 1,000, and those 1,000 remaining were fleeing. Earth had lost 4 ships. 2 destroyers and 2 cruisers destroyed in concentrated fire. 167 crew members had died. Kim received that number in silence and held it for a long moment before she moved on to the next order. She sent 2 fast attack cruisers to track the Vorkai withdrawal vector and confirm their destination. She ordered medical teams onto the damaged ships. She put engineering crews onto the cruisers that had taken heavy hits and needed immediate structural assessment. She put the dreadnoughts on low alert and ordered crew rest rotations. Then she opened a channel to Ambassador Zilveris. The Tyrrhenian command station was very quiet. Zilveris had watched the battle from the sensor screens, trying to understand what he was seeing. He had no frame of reference for it, no context. 53 ships had just dismantled a fleet that had destroyed 1,200 of the best warships the Alliance had ever built. The numbers made no sense to him. The tactics made no sense. The way the human ships had moved through the debris field, the way they had taken Vorkai fire and kept coming, the way those enormous vessels had fought at close range with the precision of ships a tenth their size. He did not have words. He was still trying to find them when the human admiral's voice came over the channel. Ambassador, this is Admiral Kim. The Vorkai main fleet has withdrawn from your system. We are tracking their withdrawal vector. They are heading back toward Imperial territory. Based on the damage they have sustained, I do not believe they will return to this system in the near term. A short pause. Your planets are safe. Zilveris opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Admiral, he said carefully. Our whole fleet is gone. You had 53 ships, they had almost 2,000. Yes, Kim said. You won anyway. Yes. Zilveris looked at his sensor officer Voss, who had been standing at his station for the entire battle, and now looked like he might fall over from exhaustion and shock. Then he looked back at the communication screen. What are you? He asked, genuinely. Kim was quiet for a moment. We are human, she said. From Earth, we are a young species. Most of the galaxy does not know much about us. Another pause. We prefer it that way for the most part. But when someone asks for help, we show up. The news spread through the galaxy the way all galactic news spread. Slowly at first, then all at once. Trading ships picked up the story from Tyrrhenian communications. Diplomatic networks carried it. Intelligence services from a dozen species picked through the sensor records that the Tyrrhenian Alliance released in the weeks after the battle. The records were shocking. The data on the human ships, the weapons, the armor, the tactics, was unlike anything any species in the known galaxy had encountered before. Galactic analysts spent months reviewing it. The conclusion was always the same. Earth had hidden something. For decades, while presenting as a minor young species barely learning to navigate the outer stars, humanity had been quietly building a war machine that outperformed every other military force in the galaxy by a significant margin. A species from a death world, with gravity twice the galactic average, with an evolutionary history of constant predator threat, with a recorded civilization history full of war after war after war, with a biology that recovered from damage faster than most species could process it. A species that had looked at the hostile galaxy around them and decided, quietly, without announcing it to anyone, to make sure they were never the weakest thing in the room. The Vorkai Empire sent a formal diplomatic communication to Earth 3 months after the battle. It was the first diplomatic communication Earth had ever received from them. It requested a cessation of hostilities. Earth's government sent back a 1-page response that agreed to the cessation on the condition that the Vorkai Empire withdrew completely from all Tyrrhenian Alliance territory and paid reparations as determined by a Tyrrhenian court. The Vorkai agreed. They had not been given a choice that made any sense to refuse. Counselor Veth stood again at the observation window of the Alliance command tower. The stars looked different now, warmer. The Vorkai fleet had been gone for 2 weeks. The outer planets were being resettled. The defense stations were being rebuilt. There was a long, difficult, expensive road ahead for the Tyrrhenian Alliance, and Veth knew it. But they were alive, the planets were intact. The species continued. He had a meeting scheduled for the following day with Admiral Kim, who was remaining in the system for 2 more months to ensure the Vorkai did not send any follow-up forces. He had prepared a list of questions for her, diplomatic questions, alliance questions, trade questions, questions about what kind of relationship the Tyrrhenian Alliance and Earth might build going forward. He had one question he planned to ask before all the others. When he had sent that SOS, he had sent it to every Deathworlder species in range. The Kreth, the Valdoon, the Burning Hands of Sereth, the humans, all of them. He had not expected a response from any of them. He had sent the signal because there was nothing else left to do. Only one species had answered. He wanted to ask why. What had made them come when no one else had? What logic or value or calculation had led a young species 61 light-years away to launch their most powerful fleet into someone else's war? He suspected that when he asked Admiral Kim that question, she would not have a complicated answer. He suspected the answer would be very simple. He was right. When he asked, the next morning, sitting across a conference table from a small human woman with calm eyes, Kim looked at him for a moment and then she said, "Because you asked, and because it was the right thing to do." Veth sat with that for a long time after the meeting was over. Somewhere out in the galaxy, other species were updating their intelligence files on humanity, revising threat assessments, adding pages and pages to what had previously been a thin, unremarkable profile of a young Deathworlder species that no one had paid much attention to. From now on, people would pay attention. From now on, when an SOS went out in the dark between the stars, every species in the galaxy would wonder if this time again the humans would be the ones to answer it, and every species that had ever thought about starting a war of conquest would think very carefully about whether that young species from the high-gravity death planet had any reason to care about who they were attacking. The answer for any species unlucky enough to threaten the innocent was simple. Humanity always had a reason, and humanity always showed up.